What's up everybody, welcome back. So let's continue working on our multiplayer inventory system, and today I want to take a look at setting up stack sizes and making sure that we can also split stacks. So for example, I have these orbs set up with a stack size of 3 and the fence with a stack size of 2 and the dishes with a stack size of 1. So if I go into my inventory right now, I can just stack all of this stuff, for example, but I can't go higher than 3 because that's the maximum stack size. And if I right click an item, I get a little drop down menu where I can split stacks and drop items as well. And there's also a little description of the item below here. So that's what we're gonna take a look at start setting up today. We might not be able to finish everything, but at least we're gonna make a start. If you like the project, please consider leaving a like, and if you want to get your hands on the project files, you can become a member of the YouTube channel, and then you will get access to the premium channels in the Discord, and you will also get access to the download of this project. So with all of that stuff out of the way, let's dive into today's video. So first of all, let's open our pickup item info structure, and we're going to add 2 variables to that. So a little side note, working with structures in blueprints is kind of fragile, so whenever you make a change to a structure or something like that, you might want to make a backup before that. In the worst case, your structure can get corrupted and your project is kind of screwed. So make sure when working with structures, always have backups available. Normally adding a variable to a structure isn't that big of a deal if you start changing default values or you're gonna set up removing items and things like that. That's going to be a little bit dangerous, so keep that in mind. For now we're just gonna add 2 variables, so that's not going to be too big of a deal. So let's add the first one, and that's going to be the maximum stack size. So max stack size, and that's an integer. And we're also going to add the item description, and that's going to be a text variable. So the item description, and that's a text variable. So now we need to set those up in our data table. So let's close this down and go into our pickup item data table. And in here we can set the stack sizes and the descriptions. So for now I'm going to set the orbs to a stack size of 3, and let's call this a strange glowing orb or something. And then we have our fan blades, and I'm going to set the stack size to 2, and then let's give it a description as well. So a set of fan blades. And then we have our last item, and that's the dish. So we're not going to make that stackable, so I'm going to give that a -1 input, so that means it can't be stacked at all. And then we have the item description, and I'm going to say a detached satellite dish. And that should be good to go. So let's save and close this one down, and now we want to go into our third person character because we need to change our add item to inventory function, because that's going to have to take stacks into account. So first of all, we need a bunch of new local variables, so let's set those up first, and then we're going to take a look at changing the actual function. So local variables, and we have the isSlotFound as the last one, so we're going to add the can stack item boolean. So that's a local can stack item. Then we also have another boolean, and that's isStackLimited. So let's create another local variable. Oh really, local isStackLimited. Then we're going to set up an integer for the maximum stack size. So, oh, not a normal variable, that's my bad. Local variable, and then local maximum stack size. Then we also need our all items added boolean. So let's create another boolean. Oh, freaking really. A local all items added. And then we're going to add 2 more integers. So the local new stack size. So local new stack size. That's an integer. And we also want to add the amount left to add. So local amount left to add. So that's good to go. We need to set our maximum stack size to an integer, and the rest of them are booleans, so that's fine. Now, first of all, what we want to do at the beginning of this function is get our data table for the content to add. So we have our local content to add somewhere. Let me see. So we set that over here, the content to add. So we're going to drag off the content to add, and we're going to break this structure. And we're going to look for the item row name inside of our data table. So let's drag off the item row name and let's get a table row. And then we want to get our pickup item info so we can break that structure. So let's do that right away. And now we can set up our maximum stack size. So first of all, I'm going to grab a switch on integer. So let's drag off the maximum stack size, and I'm going to switch on integer. So we can plug this into the row found pin, and I'm going to add two inputs, 2 pins in here, and I'm going to get rid of the default pin, and then I'm going to start at -1. So we have -1 and 0, and I'm not going to get rid of the default, by the way, so we're going to keep the default pin. That's my bad. So with this in place, we can set this up. So first of all, the -1 means that the item cannot be stacked at all. So we're going to drag in our can stack item boolean, and we're going to set this to false. Then we're going to set the is stack limited, drag it in, and set this one to true. And the last thing we want to do is grab our local maximum stack size and set this one to 1. So we're just going to do that by hand. Just set 1 over here. So we can plug this into the -1 row, and then we can simply grab the first 2 booleans and copy them. So if this is 0, then we can plug this in over here. This means we can stack the item, and the stack is actually unlimited. So we're not going to set is stack limited. We're going to set that false. And then we don't need a maximum stack size because the stack is unlimited. So we can keep it like this. And for the last one is when we actually have a stack size in place. So let's copy all 3 of them and plug those into the default pin. And then we're going to say can stack item is true, the stack size is limited, and we're going to set the maximum stack size to the value from our data table. So we can grab the maximum stack size and plug that in over here. So that should be good to go. Let's create a little bit more room over here. There we go. So then we're going to grab our all items added boolean and drag it in over here as well. So we can plug everything into here. So make sure we connect up all 3 of the branches. And then we're going to set the all items added boolean to true. Then we need our local new stack size. So we can drag that in as well. And we're going to set this to 0. And we're going to grab our local amount left to add. Also set that one to 0. So plug it in over here. And the last one we need is our local is slot found. And we're going to set this one to false. So we have all of our variables set up. And now we can actually start looking for the correct inventory slot. So we want to grab all of this stuff that we just created, and we're going to plug it in right before the branch over here where it says local inventory index is smaller than 0. So we can disconnect it over here, plug it into the get table row name, and then at the end we can plug in the local is slot found boolean back into our branch over here. So this means we simply reset all of our booleans, because later we're going to make sure that we have a take all item button, and then we want to make sure that we can take or add more items to our inventory than just one. So this is just a little prep work for later. So now we can take a look at the actual function, and we're simply going to start at the first branch over here. So the local inventory index is smaller than 1, and we're going to follow the true branch. So first of all, over here we're looking for an empty slot. So over here we don't really need to do anything. If a slot is empty, we can always add something in here, so that's good to go. We want to grab our completed pin where we have the local isSlotFound boolean, so that's over here. And if we didn't find a slot, normally we're simply going to look for a slot with the same item. And in this case, first we want to know if we can actually stack the item or not, because if not, we don't need to look for another slot. So we're going to grab another branch in here, and we're going to grab the false branch from the local isSlotFound, and we're going to plug that into the new branch. And over here we want to know if we can stack the item, so we're going to grab our local can stack item boolean. Now if this is false, that means we cannot add this item because we do not have an empty slot and the item cannot be stacked, so we can't plug it in another slot. So in this case we need to make sure that we get rid of the item. So first of all, I'm just going to add a print in here so I know what happens. So I'm going to say inventory full, item cannot stack. So inventory full, item cannot stack. There we go. Let's make the text red just to be sure. Okay, something like red, that's fine. Keep it on screen a little bit longer. There we go. Now if we can't add an item to an inventory, I'm simply going to call my throw item function, so that way we're going to throw it back into the world and the item doesn't get lost. So we want to make sure that we drag this to an empty spot over here somewhere, and then I'm simply going to call the throw item function that's also on our character. So do not call server throw item because we're already the server when we're handling the inventory. So we're already on the server instance, so we can simply call the throw item function over here. And what do we want to throw? Well, we want to throw our content to add, so we can drag that in over here. And what we want to do is simply, let me see. Oh, we want to make a structure, obviously. So we're going to drag off the contents, and first we need to make an array. And from the array, we can make an inventory content structure. And then we can break our structure over here. So we can plug in the name directly and make sure that we plug in the name and the item amount over here. So it's not from a container, so we're going to leave the boolean to false, and this should be good to go. So now the items that cannot fit in our inventory will be thrown back into the world. And the last thing we want to do is make sure that we hook this up back to the end. So we're going to go over here to our BP pickup is valid, and over here we're simply going to plug this back in. So make sure you connect it up over here to the is valid boolean, not a boolean, the is valid node, and then we're going to continue by removing the saved pickup and updating our HUD and newsfeed and things like that. So that's the first branch kind of done, because we also have a true pin over here, so let's go there first. So that means that we can stack the item, and we're going to look in the for each loop where we're looking for a similar slot. So over here is this, if this is true, we want to plug it into the for each loop where it previously came from. And then in the actual for each loop, we need to make some changes, because right now we need to make sure that we check the size of the stacks. So right after the boolean, if we found an item that matches, we're going to create a bit more room over here. Something like that should do. And let's disconnect it over here. First of all, we're going to grab another branch, plug it into the true pin, and we want to know if we can stack the item with a limited stack or not. So first of all, let's grab our can stack item, and we're going to grab a boolean, so that's end. We're going to grab an end boolean, and then we're also going to grab our local is stack limited, and we're going to flip this around. So we're going to grab a not bool. So if this item can be stacked and the stack is not limited, don't plug it into the branch. First of all, we want to grab an or bool, and we're going to make another condition, because if we can stack the item and the stack is limited, so let's copy those two, and let's grab an end node for these ones as well, plug them in, and add a third pin over here, because right now we want to know the current size of our stack. So if we go to the for each loop, the array element break inventory structure, from that one you want to get the item amount, and we want to know if this is smaller than our maximum stack size. So we're going to do less than, And over here we can simply plug in our local maximum stack size. And plug this into the end node as well. So this goes into the OR, and then we can plug this into the condition. So if we can stack an item and the stack is not limited, or if we can stack an item, it's limited but it's not at the maximum size, then we can continue. If not, we need to look for another slot. So if this is true, then we can simply plug it back into the boolean where it came from, because we found a successful slot. So let's move this back over a little bit. This should be good to go. Now, if we follow this branch, then we're going to end up over here for the local is slot found. And if this is true, we're actually going to add the item to the array. And over here, we need to make changes as well. So let's go over here first. So local is slot found, and then follow the true pin. You will end up over at a set array element. And over here, we're going to make some changes. So first of all, let's grab the new stack size, and we need to calculate that. So we can disconnect it over here, and we can grab our inventory contents and the content to add. We're going to add them together, and we're going to store them in a local variable. So let's grab our local new stack size, drag it over here, plug it in, and make sure that we grab both of these pins from the set array element node and plug them into the setter. So this also grabs the branch from the beginning. If we actually drop it onto a slot with the same content, we will end up immediately in this branch. So we have two branches coming up here. So we have our stack size stored. First of all, we can grab a boolean, and we want to know if the stack is limited. So let's grab local is stack limited, plug it in over here. If it's not limited, then we can actually just continue to the set array element. We don't need to do anything. We can just add the items and we should be good to go. We need a little bit more room here. So let's make room. Let me drag all of this stuff out of the way for now. That's an old boolean, we're going to end up there later. So local is stack limited. If it's false, we're going to continue to the set array element. If the stack is actually limited, we need to grab another branch, because we want to know if we can add everything or not. So we're going to grab our local new stack size and drag it in. And we want to compare it. So if this is smaller than or equal to the maximum stack size, then we can add everything. So let's do less or equal. Plug it in and grab our maximum stack size. Plug that in as well. So if this condition is true, then we can also just add everything. So we can simply plug the branch into the set array element node and continue. If this is false, we have too many items to add to the stack. So now we need to make some calculations. So first of all, we're going to grab our local amount left to add. And we're going to grab a setter, plug that into the false pin. So the amount left to add is the new stack size minus the maximum stack size. So we can grab the new and the maximum stack size over here. And if we grab a subtract node, plug everything in. So this is the amount that we cannot add to this stack, and we need to add this amount somewhere else. Then we can grab our new stack size, and we're going to set that to the maximum stack size. So local new stack size. Grab a setter, plug it in, and set it to the maximum stack size. So we're going to add the maximum to this stack. So this stack is full. And then we want to grab our local all items added boolean. And we want to make sure that we set it to false over here. By default, we set it to true. If we cannot add all the items, we need to make sure we set it to false. And after that, we can go into the set array element node, and that should be good to go. So with that stuff done, we can go a branch lower, and over here we let's go all the way to the beginning. So we have the branch where we check the inventory index is smaller than 0. If that's false, we're checking if we're dropping it on a slot with the same contents. If that's false, we're checking if we're dropping it on an empty slot. So if this is true, we're going to end up with another set array element node, and over here we also want to make sure that we make a few changes. And they're actually pretty similar to what we did above, so we can kind of copy all of this stuff. So let's grab everything that we just added in the other branch. So the new stack size, the branches for the limited stacks and the calculations. Let's copy and paste that over here. So we can grab the branches from the set array element node, plug it into the new stack size, but over here we do not need to add this stuff together. So we can simply get rid of the player inventory content, and the content to add amount is the new stack size. So plug that in directly. Then we're gonna check if the stack is limited. If this is false, we want to plug it into the set array element node. And if this next branch is true, we're also going to plug it into the set array element node directly. And otherwise we need to make our calculations over here, and then we can plug our local all items added also into the set array element node. So those should be good to go. And all we need to do over here is make sure that we grab our local content to add. So let's disconnect it over here, drag this to the side, and we're gonna break it. And then we also want to make a structure, so let's make an inventory content structure, and we're gonna plug in the name directly and simply grab our new stack size variable, so not the maximum but the new stack size, and plug that in over here. So that should match up now, and that should work. Now we want to continue to a new branch, but we might also want to go up here. So let me double check. So we have a loose end over here from an old branch. So if we go to the for each loop where we check if we can drop it on a slot with the same contents, if the slot is not found, previously we just stopped the execution, inventory full, we added a little print and the item would get lost. So right now what we're going to do from the false pin over here, we're also going to plug it into the throw item. So let's look for the throw item and plug that in as well. So we have two branches going into throw item right now. And with that setup, we want to go to the end over here. Let me double check. So we're going to grab both of the branches from the set array element node, and both of them come into the BP pickup. So let's disconnect the throw item for now. We don't really want to plug that in over here. Move this over a little bit. So what we're going to do is check if we need to add items in another slot. So let's grab a branch over here, grab the branches from the isValid node and plug them into the new branch. And over here we're going to check if we have added all of our items. So we're going to get the all items added boolean, plug it in over here. Now if we already added all items, then we can simply continue like we used to. So we're going to grab the true pin and plug it into the isValid node for the BP pickup. And if we did not add all items, then we're going to grab our local content to add. So grab a getter for this. And we're going to set members in structure. And with this node selected, you can expand it on the side over here, and we want to set the item amount. So let's enable this one, and for the item amount we want to set it to the amount left to add. So we're going to plug this in over here, grab the true pin, plug it into the set sorry, that's not correct, grab the false pin. So we're going to leave the true pin into the isValid node, and we're going to grab the false pin and set the new inventory content structure. And then we also want to grab our local inventory index. So let's grab this one, and we're going to set this to -1. So now we do not have an inventory slot specified in the function anymore. And with this setup, we can actually loop back all the way to the beginning to our setup for the all items added. So we're going to grab this branch and we're going to go all the way to the beginning of the function. So this new stuff that we created over here, local all items added, this is where we want to plug it in. So if we did not add all of the items in our previous run, then we're going to reset these variables and we're going to look where we can store the rest of it. And if that's working, then the next time we come here, our local all items added should be true, and then we can continue to the end of the function. So this should work. Now we need to make sure that we plug our throw item in the correct bin. So for the throw item one, we want to make sure that we plug it into our, let me double check, the HUD update inventory grid. So we're throwing an item, but we're not throwing it from a container. So this is always going to be false. So we do want to save our current inventory. Well, we should be safe by just plugging it into the isValid node. So let's do that. Let's grab our throw item branch, plug it into the isValid bin, and this should work. That shouldn't cause any problems. Okay. So this should be good to go. We have our add item to inventory modified, and it's really spaghetti. But it'll have to do for now. I'm not going to clean it up. We might get to this later. So with all of this stuff in place, we want to make some changes to our container. Oh, that's not true. We're going to add one more branch in here. So when we go to the beginning of the function, we have the branches. Inventory index is smaller than 1. That's false. If we're dropping it on a slot with the same content, over here we're going to add a branch. So let's grab a branch, plug it into the true bin for the contents that match, and then we're going to simply check if we can stack the item. So we're going to grab our can stack item boolean, plug it in over here, and if we cannot stack it, that means this doesn't work. So we need to grab the false bin and plug it into the for each loop, where we start looking for an empty slot. So for each, and then for the empty slot, and for the true bin we can simply continue to the new stack size setter over here. So if we can stack an item, we're going to calculate the new stack sizes, and if we cannot stack an item, we're going to look for an empty slot, and so on. Okay, so now we should be good to go over here, and now we can go into our BP container. So inside of the BP container, I want to make a function that'll make sure that we cannot exceed our stack sizes if we set up the containers for the level. So if we add a container to the level and we're setting up everything in the details panel, but we do not know the actual maximum stack sizes by head, and for an accident, for example, we enter 6 orbs in one stack, I'm going to make a function that'll make sure it runs by every container and it'll split everything into the correct stack sizes if you accidentally added a stack that's too big. So that's what this function is going to do. And for that we need 2 variables. So we're going to grab our container contents and we can duplicate them, and we're going to name it the temp refresh contents. So temporary refresh contents. That's an inventory content structure and an array, so that's good. And then we're going to add a single boolean, and that's going to be the isContainerReady. So that's a bool. Let's start with the isContainerReady boolean, and we simply want to hook that up to our event begin play over here to the completed pin of the for loop. So we're going to grab our isContainerReady, plug it in over here and set it to true. So if this is done, then all of the inventory slots are set up and we are good to go to manage our own stuff. So what we're going to do is create a new custom event, and I'm going to call that refresh contents. So custom event refresh contents. And in here we actually want to get our game mode. So let's add an input over here. And that's going to be the game mode. And that's our third person game mode. Then we're going to grab a branch and we want to know if the container is ready or not. So we can plug in our isContainerReady bool. And then if this is false, then we can delay till next tick. So delay until next tick. And plug it back into the branch. And we're going to do that just as long until the container is ready. Then we're going to store our container contents in our temporary refresh contents. So let's grab the true pin, grab a setter, and we're going to plug in our container contents. So the actual contents are stored in the temporary array now. Then we're going to grab a for each loop, and we're going to loop through all of the container contents. So not the temporary one, but the original one. Plug it in over here. And we're simply going to set all of them to empty. So let's drag in our container contents again, and we're going to set an array element. Plug it into the loop body. Make sure that you grab the index from the array, from the for each loop, sorry. And then we can make a structure, and we're simply going to make an empty slot. So the amount is 0, that's good to go. Size to fit shouldn't be needed. So now we can grab our refresh contents and we can start messing with that. And all we really need to do for that is call our add item to container function, because that will automatically make sure it will not exceed stack sizes. So what we can do is grab another for each loop, grab our temporary contents, and then we can simply add them back to the container by using the add item to container function from the GameMode. So from the input, we're going to drag off the GameMode, and we're going to call add item to container. Plug it into the loop body. So we need to make an array for the contents, and we can plug in the array element. So for the inventory index, we could plug it in. It isn't really needed, but let's do it. And for the BP container, that's a reference to ourselves. So this will make sure that our stack sizes do not exceed our maximum stacks if we set them up in the wrong way. So we have that in place as well. And now all we need to do is go into the game mode and make some changes there. So let's open up our third person game mode, and let's start in the event graph. So all the way at the end of the event in here, we have a branch that checks if this is the first time loading map. If this is true, then we're going to grab a for each loop all the way at the end over here. And we can loop through all of our saved container actors. So let's drag in all saved container actors. And we're going to call our refresh contents event. So let's drag off here and refresh the contents. I probably misspelled that like I usually do. So let me double check. BP container. Yep. There we go. Oh, freaking really. Oh, you're not crashing on me, you little. Okay, I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, we're back up. I renamed the event and this time it didn't crash, so we're good to go. In the third person game mode, we're going to add the for each loop all the way at the end in the event graph, and we can plug in our all saved container actors like we already did before it crashed. And then we can call our refresh contents event over here and plug it into the loop body. And the game mode is a reference to ourselves. So there we go. So we only need to do this the first time when we load the map. If we made a mistake with the stacks, this will correct it, and then everything will be saved on the save game. So the next time, if we simply load everything from the save game, there's no need to do this again. So that's why it's behind the branch for the first time loading map. Okay, so that's in place, and now all we need to do in here is change our add item to container event in the same way that we did to the character. So let's go to the add item to container, and we can actually make our lives pretty easy by copying most of it. So what we can do, if we go all the way to the end of the function, there we have our set array elements 2 times and the update save container actors, container contents changed. So these 4 nodes, we want to keep them. So we can disconnect this stuff over here. And let's move this to the side. Then we want to go all the way to the beginning of the function, and we want to follow the branch all the way up to the first branch. And over here we also want to disconnect it. So let me double check. So that should be pretty much good to go. So if we disconnect it over here, after the local container inventory content setter before the branch that checks the item row names, then we should be able to just copy and paste all of the stuff from the character. So let's move this to the side. Now over here we obviously do not have an inventory index. Oh, we do have an inventory index actually. So that's going to make our lives even easier. We can simply get rid of all of this stuff, delete it, and then we can go into our character. So add item to inventory. At the beginning over here, we want to make sure that we do not grab the first part. So we want to start with the get table row name that we created, and we're going to leave the local inventory index and the player inventory content setter out of it. So let's grab all of this stuff, move it to the side. And for the end of the function, we also don't want the isValid node with the third person game mode that saves the pickup actor and all of that stuff. So we can also move this stuff to the side after the isValid node. So we need to make sure that we have two branches over here from the throw item and one from the true pin for the all items added, and they need to continue to the rest of the function. So let's grab all of this stuff and let's copy it to our game mode. So again, starting with the table row name and ending right before the isValid node, grab everything in between here, let's copy it, go into our third person game mode and let's paste it over here. Resolve, how do you want to fix them? Do nothing, let's do nothing. We're gonna fix that ourselves. So first of all, let's make sure it's in place over here and it's not overlapping anything. So that should be good. Now let's start at the beginning. First of all, we're simply gonna plug in the execution pin over here and that should be good. For the inventory contents break over here, we need to grab our content to add setter and we're going to drag off here and plug that into the break for the inventory contents. So that should work as well. Then we want to make sure that we grab these local variables and create them. So if you right click, you can create local variable and it will create it for you. So we're going to do it for the limited stack size. For the can stack item, for the maximum stack size, and then we also have all items added, new stack size, and amount left to add. So we should have all of our variables in place right now, and there's only one issue, and that's our throw item event. So for the throw item, we need to make sure, let me double check. So we can get the interacting player from the container, and from there we can call our throw item function. So we have the BP container as an input for the event over here. So that's a very long way to the left. So BP container, we need to make sure that we grab that one. So let's go over here. Let's get our BP container. And from the BP container, we can get our interacting players. So interacting players array. And we're simply going to grab the first player in here. So let's get a copy of index 0. And from here we can call our throw item. So let's call throw item. We already had the node. Okay, well, we can move over the pins then, that's fine. And in this case it is actually from a container. So we want to enable the is from container boolean, and then we can simply move everything over. So that should be good. So this node needs to be plugged into the end of the function. So we want to plug this into the set array element that we moved over to the side. So that's all the way over here. Plug it in. So we can move this stuff a little bit closer. And then we have another branch, and that's over here for the all items added branch, the true pin. We also want to make sure that we connect that one up back to the set array element for the all saved container actors. And now this should pretty much work. So we do not need to do a whole lot of work in this event or function. We have everything hooked up. I think we're good to go actually. So let's compile. Okay, there we go. Variable player inventory in game mode. Oh, sure. So we need to make sure that we change the player inventory in here as well. And the player inventory actually needs to be replaced with the BP container contents. So if we grab the container from our input, let me double check that I'm not screwing up things. Yeah, that should be good to go. So we can just do right click, get our BP container from the inputs of the function. And from the container, we can get the contents of that container. So get container contents. And then we can use this for the for each loop. Get rid of the player inventory. We don't need it in here. And we can copy and paste it for the second for each loop a little bit more to the right. So let's get rid of the player inventory as well and plug in the container contents. And we still have player inventories in the set array elements, obviously. So over here also plug in the container contents, get rid of the player inventory, and do that for both of the set array elements. So that should be good as well. And we still have something over here, player inventory contents. So we need to replace those with the container contents. So we have the local container inventory contents, and over here we have local player inventory contents. So we need to swap them out. So let's simply drag it on top of here and it will change them over. And we have a few of them, so let's make sure that we do all of those. There we go. And we're still not there. Okay, so I'm not sure why that's not really working. Working really? Container contents could not be found. Well, it's actually here, so that's kind of weird. Let's see if we disconnect it. So that's not working. If we grab a new setter, maybe. So the inventory contents that comes from over here, the array element, and then let's move over the execution pins and see if it likes that better. Okay, so that's just an issue with replacing the nodes, so we need to make sure that we actually do it manually. Fine. And the next one is over here. Oh, you gotta love Unreal sometimes. And do we have them all? No. We have one left over here. Nice, thank you. Okay, so we should be good to go. Let's have a little test and see if we can actually stack items now. So I ran a quick little test off camera and there are two small things that I forgot, so it's not too bad. If we open up our third person character, add item to inventory, so we have the two set array element nodes and the one where we actually calculate the new stack for the items that stack. So if we have a stack with matching items, over here I didn't plug in the new stack size. So we need to make sure that we plug in our new stack size into the make inventory content structure over here. And for the other one we actually did that, so that's good to go. And we need to do the same thing in the third person game mode because we copied over the function. So over here we also have the set array element and we did not plug in an item amount, so we can grab our local new stack size and plug it in over here. And with that stuff plugged in, it should work. Now what you might want to do is get rid of your save game, so that way it will actually go over all of your containers and make sure that your stack sizes are good to go and things like that. So I'm simply going to go to my folder, show in Explorer, And I'm going to get rid of the save game, so saved save games, and just delete all of this stuff. And let's have a little look. So I'm going to select the save slot for the client, and first of all let's just grab these dishes over here. So they are stacked in stacks of 2, and if we pick them up they should split into stacks of 1. So that's actually working, and we cannot stack these because we set them as not stackable, so that's working. Now let's grab these fans and let's grab a few orbs. So let's try and stack these orbs, and it will actually stack them, and the rest will go in a separate stack because it's too big for the stack size. So that seems to be working as well. And if we open up a container, for example, so over here we can drag in the 3 orbs on top of the 2 orbs over here, and it will split them in the correct sizes as well. So that's actually working, and we can double check for the fans, for example, so they can't stack anymore, so that should be good to go. So I think we have this good to go and working. So at least we can stack items right now, and it took a little bit longer than I expected. So in the next video we're gonna set up splitting stacks and make sure that we have the drop down menu for splitting. So that's today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like, and I'll be back soon for more. Talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.